My name is Kevin, and I collect old irons. We have, in most of the videos we've seen so far in this series, shown a Tailor iron. These are the professional irons. They're of large size, and they occur in every technology. And we will see a lot more of those today. I like the Tailor irons. I'm entranced by their considerable size, but also by their considerable variety. And these are surprisingly inexpensive. There seems to be an inverse price rule when it comes to irons. The larger the iron, the lower the cost. Smaller the iron, the higher the cost. And that is in part because the very small irons are also collected by the toy collectors. So you have, again, multiple disciplines in terms of the collecting scene. And the large irons present storage and display issues. The Tailor irons in the past were known as goose irons. We might take a look at the 1902 Sears Roebuck catalog again. At the bottom of the listing, you'll see a variety of Tailor goose irons, different prices. The 12-pounder costs 48 cents. And here in the 1908 catalog, we see, again, Tailor goose irons. Here, a 12-pounder for 70 cents. We can call that inflation. For what it's worth, an iron like this today might cost $20, $25. We'll find that this one has some particularly good markings, so maybe somebody like me would be willing to pay a little more. The goose term springs from the shape of the handle in some of the very early blacksmith irons. They had a goose-shaped handle. I unfortunately don't have one of those to show. By the way, the plural for goose in this context is gooses, and you might, if you want, look that up in a good dictionary. In England at one time, the colloquial term for these was the weasel. In those days, we're talking probably a couple, 300 years ago, if a household was of modest but some moneyed means, they would contract out the ironing to the tailor. And the itinerant tailors would come around door to door. The household, as a convenience to the tailor, would have a weasel iron in the near the fireplace, so they didn't have to carry that iron about them. Which brings forth the following. Penny for a spool of thread, penny for a needle, that is where the money goes, pop goes the weasel. So what does the phrase, pop goes the weasel, mean? If you look online, you'll see that there's alternative explanations. Perhaps the most prevalent you'll see is that presented by the weavers, who, referring to the stanza that we just did, will say that in the spinning wheels, there is a part called a weasel, and that at the end of an operation, that pops. Well, I am here to tell you that that is absolutely wrong. If you look at the whole song, you'll see that there's nothing about weaving. Indeed, in the lyrics that we saw for that one particular stanza, there is nothing about weaving. All there is the cost of a spool of thread and the cost of a needle. The whole song, which comes out of the 1850s, is an iteration through many alternative stanzas of the costs of things and the financial problems that might ensue. At which point, the household gets rid of the most discretionary, disposable item in the house, the weasel. Pop goes the weasel means that the weasel goes to the pawn shop. And pop is a colloquial term in England for pawning. I should tell you that that explanation is not my own. It comes from A.H. Glissman, who wrote this wonderful book, The Evolution of the Sad Iron, published 50 years ago. So with all that as a beginning, we're now going to show a variety of goose irons, a bit from every technology we talked about previously, and then perhaps a bit. And we'll start with this one. This is a blacksmith goose iron. As is true for the early American blacksmith items, they're really hard to date. The blacksmith created the bottom. You can actually see multiple layers of the iron that were pounded in to make this base, affixed a piece, turned it around, and there we are. Again, date uncertain. I'm going to guess early in the 1800s. Of course, later on, the process of casting came in, and in the casting process, they cast the bottom. They probably as part of a factory operation, but had some equivalent of a blacksmith who would, or contracted out to the blacksmith to make various of these handles, turn for a little bit of ornamentation, and then placed into the mold at the times that these things were made. This one, you'll actually notice the spacings here were maybe a little further apart than contract. There's a little bit of an extra space here. This particular iron, 21 pounder, it says in the back, is from the New England Butt Company in Providence, Rhode Island. The New England Butt Company was, in its early business, a maker of ropes. And they went to the production of irons in a variety of categories, but they always included a little bit of a rope design in their irons. And you can see a bit of that rope design around the bottom. I will now move to a slug iron. This is also from the New England Butt Company, also including the design around the base. This is a slug iron, probably something from the late 1800s. It takes a little bit of its design elements perhaps from the Bless and Drake coal iron. It's got a pin in the back, top comes off, and then within we've got a very heavy slug. So, New England Butt Company slug iron. For a moment, I'll put that over there. And, oh yeah, here is another slug iron. Let me pull the pin off. There are various slug irons of this size and general shape. Again, we got something of that ox tongue design here. You would have to use a chisel here to pull this out. I'll just show you that there is a slug in here. Ah, yes. Again, there are several of these designs out there. I've not seen a company name or a date on any of these, but the general design here is about the same as one found in the natural gas Tailor irons of the 1890s. And so that would be my approximate date there. Many of the Tailor irons of that period also don't have names or dates. Before we proceed, we might give some credits. Credits to the tailors who hoisted these heavy irons and may well have used them for several hours each day. And I also want to give credit to my furniture, this table and this table here that have been supporting these irons. Those who have visited the B&B know I'm a big fan of the way the old furniture was constructed. And since this video is recorded on the 4th of July, credit to the only president of the United States who was a tailor. Andrew Johnson, in his early life, was a tailor. If you go to the Andrew Johnson Historical Site in Greenville, Tennessee, they actually have a couple of his original Tailor irons, goose irons, on display. So what we're going to do now is go through a variety of irons, showing them in each technology, and we might as well start, I should never pick up any of these irons with one hand, with a detachable handle iron. Reminder, we saw a detachable handle Tailor iron earlier. This is a sensible, and I probably should not try to do this with one hand, my thumb not being as strong as a Tailor's would be. The handle does come off. This is the N.R. Streeter company. We've seen a little bit about Nelson Streeter before. The sensible, these come in all kinds of various sizes. This one's a 20-pounder. I think they go up to 24 at least. And let's take a look at a couple of natural gas irons. This particular one is especially common. It's the Stewart iron from the Central Manufacturing Company, Binghamton, New York. Patented 1901. As far as I know, I've actually owned a couple of three of these over the course of time. I've never seen a trivet with one of these, and I'm hoping somebody out there maybe can apprise me of what the trivet might look like. The trivets amongst these heavy irons are often included in the natural gas irons in particular. This is called the Rose iron, patented in 1906, if you can read the markings in the front. There were quite a number of irons of this shape and size, at least judging by the various trivets, and I've seen 8 or 10 or more trivets of this size with various markings. Again, very heavily made cast iron trivets. We are doing this particular video in a series of smaller segments because of the amount of moving of these irons around. This particular liquid fuel iron is from 1893. You have to really look hard to read the patent date underneath the shield, from Philadelphia. It has the original key, which is what you'd use here for controlling the influx. And we'll take a look at 3 of the liquid fuel irons all together. I don't have a company name for this one, but here's a large one with a tank, pretty good sized gasoline tank on the side. And then let's just do a European iron. This is quite sought after in the collector's community. This iron is from Sweden. There's a couple of different manufacturers that made these with the large, usually brass tank beneath the handle, various knobs to play with, and so forth. The again, this has a chimney in the front, which is mostly for show. There's an outlet here on the one side, the other 2 sides are closed. Many of these Tailor irons have trivets. This trivet is a marriage, maybe not associated with this iron. They are bought separately, and that's usually the case for these irons. And we should do a charcoal iron. Reminder, we saw 2 charcoal or coal Tailor irons when we did that particular video. The iron I have here is a James Smith Limited. That is from Canada, and it has, as the charcoal irons in America and Canada usually have, a pin and the top lifts off. So we have talked about flat irons, we have talked about detachable handles, slugs, natural gas, gasoline, and coal irons. I'm going to finish this off with a couple of more irons of a technology we haven't talked about before, and whether these actually count as Tailor irons per se or not, I would not know. But these are industrial irons from early part of the 1900s, and you might see the 2 inlets, inlet and outlet here. This is for steam. This would be in a factory that's either making clothing and then ironing for the market, and they have a big oil-powered furnace making steam, and they would probably have a series of these. This is not, although there is a handle here, this is not intended to be used by people. Instead, this little gadget here is used to basically pull these things around on a large platform to iron on a massive scale. And you can see these much larger. There actually is a whole realm of industrial ironing equipment, but those are, you only see old photographs and prints of those things because they are massive, size of city buses, some of them. This is a Koenig, also in a smaller one, but again, with that steam gadget, I have a stand to go with it. The stand does not necessarily go with this particular iron. I believe this is of the industrial end of things because of the screws that were used for bolting it onto a table. This has a patent date of 1915. So, we have today talked about the Tailor goose irons, and in the next couple of 3 videos we'll be talking about some of the other specific specialty groups of irons. Thank you.